So here, so what are you doing is here. So just import. So import threading module. Okay, import threading module. So I want to perform two operations simultaneously. For one is for generating even numbers. So there is one function, and this function generate. There is one function, and this function generate which numbers? Even numbers. So n mod 2 equal to 0. Then you are trying to print. So this is which number here? Even number. You are trying to display the even number here. So this is even number. So there is a function called odd number for n in range of 1 comma 21. If n mod 2 is not equal to 0. So print format. So I'm trying to display which number? Odd number. So here I write how many functions? Two functions. One is even number function and one more is odd number function. Suppose if I'm not executing these functions as a thread, how these are executed sequentially. First it execute even number and then execute what? Odd number. So until execution of even number function is not completed, it will not execute what? Odd thread function. Until execution of even thread is not completed, it will not execute which function? Odd function. Okay. So once you run this, now first it is generated which numbers? Even numbers, and then generated which numbers? Odd numbers. It means my program execution starts from where? Main. So main calls which function? Even number function. And it will generate even numbers. After that, return to the main and then call which function? Odd number. Now this is sequential. But I want these two functions to be executed how? Parallel. Means simultaneously. I want this to be executed how? Simultaneously. Then what will I do? I'll execute this as a thread. What will I do? I execute this as a thread. So where I'm saying T1 equal to threading dot thread. So what is a target? So what is a target for this even number? Okay, this is the target for this is even number. The target for this is even number. Okay, so T2 equal to threading dot thread. So what is the target for this here? Odd number. So the target for thread 1 is an even number and the target for thread 2 is what? Odd number. And how you execute a thread by calling which method? Start method. How you execute a thread by calling which method here? Start method. So where I say T1 dot start, yes. So T1 dot start and then I say T2 dot start. So this will call start method of thread 1 as well as what? Thread 2. But how? See, how can you invoke the thread or execute a thread? This is nothing but executing thread. This is nothing but what here? Executing what here? Thread. You are executing a thread by calling which method here? Start method. So you call the start method of T1 and call the start method of what here? T2. So I try to execute from command prompt so that you can see the output properly. Okay. I try to execute at the command prompt. So I try to execute at the command prompt by saying Python. So this is my program here, .py. Now if you run this, now you can see, okay, you can see first, so first it is scheduled which thread here, event thread. So after executing event thread for some time, so within the given time, the event thread is generated how many event numbers? Two event numbers. Then after that, it is come to which thread? Odd thread. And within the given time, this odd thread is generated how many numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then after that, it is come back to which thread? Event thread. And within the given time, this event thread is generated some numbers and then come back to which thread? Odd thread. And then event thread and then which one? Odd thread and then event thread. But is it this is simultaneous or not? Yes. It means this both the threads are executed simultaneously. So this thread is given some time, and within this time, it will process the instructions and switch toward another thread. And within this given time, it will process the instruction and come back to what? This thread. But this scheduling of threads are done by thread scheduler. Scheduling of threads are done by thread scheduler provided by what? PVM. That is Python virtual machine. Scheduling of threads are done by thread scheduler. So scheduling of threads are done by thread scheduler provided by whom? Python virtual machine, right? So you can see that. So if you see the life cycle of a thread, so who will take care of the execution of thread? So PVM, that is Python virtual machine. The life cycle of a thread is taken care by Python virtual machine. Okay. Now, if you see the output of this, now it is like this. So what is a life cycle of a thread? Now, if you see the life cycle of a thread, so what is a life cycle of a thread? Okay, this is the life cycle of a thread. So this is life cycle. This is a life cycle of a thread. When you see the life cycle of a thread, so thread execution, thread execution is managed by now thread execution is managed by PVM, which is nothing but Python virtual, machine. So thread execution is managed by PVM, and that is nothing but Python virtual machine here. So if you see the life cycle of a thread is in different states. If you see the different states of a thread, there is a newborn state. Okay, there is a runnable state. Okay, there is a runnable state. Okay, and there is a running state, and there is an ideal state, and there is a dead state. So these are the different states of which one here? Thread. For example, when you create a thread, suppose whenever you create a thread by saying some T1 equal to threading dot, you are creating thread like this. Threading dot thread. I just said target is, what is the target for this thread? Even number, right? So whenever you create a thread object, So thread object is moved into, now this is the object which is created. So what is the name of the object here? T1. Now it means this thread object is in which state? Newborn state. This is the first stage which is called as a newborn state. Okay, then what will happen when you call the method called which one? Start. So when you call the method start, the thread is moved. A thread is moved from newborn state to runnable state. So this thread is moved from newborn state to what? Runnable state. Now this is a second stage which is called as runnable state. So this is called as which state here? Runnable state. So in runnable state, a thread is scheduled. In runnable state, thread is scheduled for execution by whom here? Thread,
Recording
sometimes you
in
may interrupt
progress.
it. So you interrupt. Sometimes you may interrupt this thread. If you interrupt a thread, so you call some interrupt methods. So if you interrupt, okay, if you interrupt, what will happen? The thread is moved into a state? Idle state. If you interrupt, the thread is moved into a state? Idle state. Running thread, if you interrupt it, then it is moved to idle state. Okay, idle state. Then again, from idle state, again this thread is moved into a state? Running state. From idle state, this thread is again moved into a state? Running state. So once the execution of thread is completed, so the thread is in which state here? Dead state. But the thread which is dead, you cannot start again. Means you cannot call start and start two times. Okay. Once the thread is dead, okay, now this is dead state. Okay, dead state. When once the execution of thread is completed, once execution of thread is completed, then the thread is moved into a state? Dead state. But once the thread is dead, you performing the
Recording in
operation, it
progress.
will again moved into a state? Again it is moved into which state here? Runnable state. So that this thread is again scheduled for what? Execution. Okay, because if it is time based, it is given 1 millisecond. So within 1 millisecond, it will execute some instructions, and then again it is moved into a state? Runnable state. So these are different states of which one? Thread. So I said you can create a thread in two ways. One is a function based, and one more is what?
Recording in
What is the
progress.
first step is develop class, develop class by inheriting which class here? Thread class. Then second one is define constructor, define constructor which calls constructor of which class? Superclass. Define constructor which calls a constructor of superclass. Then third one is override, override run method of thread class. creating
Recording
object
in
of even
progress.
thread, and this is creating object of which thread? Odd thread. So creating object of even thread. So I just call the method called start. T2 dot, I call the method called start. So where I said T1 dot start. So after creating the object, you are invoking which method here? Start method. After creating object, you are invoking which method here? Start method. And the start method is just like a main, okay, from where your thread execution is done. Just like a main from where your thread execution is done. Okay. So this is how you are trying to create a thread here. So right now this is how you are trying to write both here. Now there are two threads out there. So one is a event thread. Yes. But here we created this both the threads by inheriting which class here? Thread class, right? So there, so we have to import, so which module here? Threading module. We have to import threading module. Now you can execute here. See, ideally also you can execute, but it will not
Recording in
How can
progress.
you execute the threads by calling which method? Start method. I call the start method of a thread. Yes. I call the start method of which one? Thread, right? So what I'm doing is here, I'm saying Python. So once you run this, so once you run this, now first it is scheduled which thread here? Nourish. So for Nourish, it is generated how many alphabets? Two alphabets. Then switch to which one? Suresh. For Suresh, it is generated how many alphabets? One alphabet. Miss, is it generating alphabets for this both the people, one after the other or concurrently? Concurrent. See here. First, it is generated how many alphabets for Naresh? Three alphabets. Then switch to which one? Suresh. After generating Suresh, it is switched to which one? Naresh. And after generating for Naresh, it is switched to which one? Suresh. It means one person is not waiting for what? Another. It means your server is generating for all these clients simultaneously. If threads are not there, then client 2 should wait until execution of client 1 and client 3 should wait until execution of client 2. But now one client should not wait for what? Another client, because it is processing the request how? Simultaneously. But how it is processing the request simultaneously? By creating what here? Threads. So name is a property of a thread. So that will return the name of the thread. But what is the default name is given by thread object is start with the thread 0, thread 1. And if you want to change the name of the thread, you are using which property? Name property, or name is a instance variable or object level variable. Name is which variable? Instance variable, or it is called as which variable? Object level variable. So name is an instance variable or object level variable. So this you can call it as a output of it. So thread is having some methods, and within that there is a method called which one? Join method. So there is a method called which one? Join. So join is an interrupted method. Okay, join is an interrupted method. Join is a interrupted method. Okay, so join is interrupted method. Miss, when you call the join method of a thread, it will interrupt the execution of what? Thread. So what will happen in working with multiple threads? Sometimes in application development, one thread want to use the output of another thread. Suppose assume that two threads are there. There is a thread 1 and one more is what? Thread 2. I want the output of thread 1 should used by what? Thread 2. Means until execution of thread 1 is not completed, it should not start which one? Thread 2. But actually threads are executed how? Simultaneously. Threads are executed simultaneously, but I want to interrupt the execution of which one? Thread 2. Because I want let a thread 1 should complete and then it should come to which one? Thread 2. Then how can I interrupt the execution of a thread? By calling which method? Join method. Suppose if thread 2 call the join method of thread 1, if thread 2 calls the join method of thread 1, then thread 2 will be joined at the end of which one? Thread 1. If thread 2 calls the join method of thread 1, so thread 2 is called at the end of the execution of which one? Thread 1. Means until thread 1 execution is not completed, then it will not use which one? Thread 2. Means when it is useful, if one thread is using the resources of which one? Another thread. When one thread is using the output of another thread, then you are calling which method? Join method. So here join is an interrupted method. If thread one calls a join method, if thread one calls a join method, if thread one calls join method on thread two or of thread two, so thread one join at the end of join at the end of at the end of which one? Thread two execution. So it means thread one until thread one wait until until thread 2 execution is what? Completed. So this is when if one thread output is used by another thread. When one thread output is used by another thread. And not only that, see, when you are working with Python, right? Every program in Python is executed within what? PVM. Every program is executed in Python within PVM. So within the process of which one? PVM. So it means whenever you run the Python program, first it will run which program? PVM. So nothing but running the PVM is nothing but here. This is called as which one? Process. This is called as a PVM process. Python virtual machine process. This is called as a PVM process. And within PVM, okay, every program and your program is executed as one thread. So by default, every program is executed within PVM process and your program is executed within PVM process as one thread. So by default, your PVM create one thread. And what is the name of that thread is? What is the name of that thread is? Main thread. What is the name of that thread is? A main thread. And this main thread calls which statement? Executable statements. Whatever executable statements are there, all these executable statements are called by which thread? Main thread. And this main thread is creating which object? User thread object. So every Python program, see, every Python program is executed as one thread only. Every Python program is executed as one thread only. But what is the name of the thread created here? Main thread. If you want to see that, how can you see that? What is the current thread created by PVM? What is the current thread created by PVM? Just see here. I want to know what is the current thread created by PVM. Now, suppose I don't create any threads, right? But what I'm doing, I'm just writing here print hello. Now, this is executable statement or not? Yes. So who execute this statement? PVM. But PVM, within PVM, your program is executed as one thread. So I want to know what is a thread which is currently in running. Then I just import which module here? Threading module. And then I'll say T1 equal to threading dot. Okay, threading dot. So what is the name of the method is current thread. So this will return the reference of which thread? Current thread. And I'm trying to say print T1 dot name. So who is creating? Now I want to know what is the current thread which is in running. I want to know what is the current thread which is in running. But are you created any thread? No. I have not created any thread, but I just get the reference of which thread? Current thread, which is currently in running. I just get the reference of a thread which is currently in what? Running. Now, if you run this code, so what is a thread created here? Main thread. But who created main thread? PVM. And that main thread call all executable statements. Means every Python program You have to understand this. Every Python, every Python program is executed within PVM process. PVM process as what here? Thread. But within PVM, there will be multiple threads will be there. One is a main thread, garbage collection thread, and whatever threads you create. So it means within PVM, number of threads will be there or not? Yes. Some predefined threads will be there and some user defined threads will be there. Predefined threads will be there and some user defined threads will. So main thread will be there, garbage collector thread will be there. Apart from that, you also created some threads like what is it? T1 and T2. Okay, now all these threads are scheduled by who is this? Python virtual machine. Because Python virtual machine is having thread scheduler which schedule the execution of a thread. So you have to understand this. Every thread, every Python program is executed within the process of PVM as one thread. So here join method is there. Again, come back to this join method here. So join is an interrupted method. If thread 1 calls a join method of thread 2, thread 1 join at the end of thread 2 execution. Thread 1 wait until thread 2 execution is what? Completed. Until thread 2 execution is completed, right? So what will happen here is, okay, assume that. Now can you change the name of the main thread? Yes, you can change the name of the main thread. How can you change the name of the thread? By using name. So you can use a name property to change the name of the thread. You can use the name property to change the name of the thread. So you can use a, yes. Okay, right? So for example, assume that, so there is one thread is there. So there is one thread. I'm just importing a thread here. And there is a class called some thread. There is one class. So what is the name of this class here? Some thread is there. So threading dot is inheriting which class here? Thread class. What is the use of some thread? Some thread generate the sum of numbers. What is the use of some thread? The use of some thread is generating sum of numbers. Generate